Listen to this. It's Mozart. In 1995, before the Champions League final, which was the third Champions League final, I think it was the fourth European Cup final, because the Champions League final was basically the European Cup final. It still is, or the same thing. It was in Vienna, and it was Milan against Ajax of Amsterdam. You might call them AC Milan. I call them Milan because I'm woke. And I think Milan had beaten Benfica, I think Sven-Goran Eriksson's Benfica, in the 1990 European Cup finals it was then, as they retained it. Milan in the Prater Stadium in Vienna, which became known as the Ernst Happel. I can't remember when Ernst Happel died. Ernst Happel, who was the Feyenoord coach when they won the European Cup, beating Celtic in the 1970 final, and he also was the coach of Hamburg, or HSV HSV, when they won the European Cup, beating Juventus in 1983 in Athens. Well, anyway, the whole point is that it was back in the Prater Stadium. So that was only 5 years. That was only 5 years between the Prater Stadium hosting the European Cup final. It's quite kind of. I mean, Vienna is a beautiful city. It's one of the loveliest cities I've been to. It's very stuck up. It's a miserable city. The people there are miserable. They complain all the time, and that's why it's sometimes it's got the highest standard of living of any European city, you would think. But obviously, there's a suspicion there that perhaps the people who are organising the European Cup final, the directors, the administrators, they quite like Vienna, so they're always quite up for letting it host. But then again, Wembley hosted the 1963 European Cup final, which also featured Benfica and Milan. That was Milan beat Benfica at Wembley in '63. That was the first time Milan had won it. And then it hosted it again in '68, didn't it? Wembley, famously, Manchester United beating Benfica, and that was like the 1995 Champions League final. Both sides were wearing their away kit that night at Wembley. So that was 5 years between Wembley and London, groovy London in the 60s, especially, and it also had the World Cup final in between times in '66. So maybe, the administrators of the European game had been in London and really quite enjoyed themselves, Carnaby Street and all that kind of stuff. I had the 71 final. Wembley had the final in 71, Ajax against Panathinaikos. So between 68 and 71, that was only 3 years. And Wembley had the final in 2011 and 2013. The new Wembley, the Champions League final 2011, when Manchester United get pumped off Barcelona, and then in 2013, where Bayern beat Dortmund. Didn't they? And then Dortmund, of course, are back at Wembley in the Champions League final last season. Real Madrid. It's almost like London, really easy for administrators and directors and all that, board members from all around the world to get to. Your oligarchs are in there as well. I'm not just not trying to say. The point I'm trying to make here is that in 1995, I'll always remember 1995. In the Champions League final, it was Milan against Ajax. Both sides, wearing their away kit, and both sides also, it was the first time ever the Champions League final, European Cup final, had allowed shirt advertising. They both had shirt adverts. I mean, remember Ajax, that classic Ajax away kit? The Ajax home kit is world famous. Just the big red block on the white. But the beauty of this thing was you saw it through the five-a-sides. It was that strip, that top was getting worn at the fives for years afterwards. Cracking side, that Ajax side of the mid-90s, but it was the kind of blue, the dark blue, almost Dundonian dark blue, with red splotches all the way through, a bit like the kit we wear to Dens Park. But the Aben Amro, was vertical. It was vertical rather than horizontal, and so it reminded you of the red block that would be on the home. So there was an away kit that was totally reminding you of the home kit. Beautiful bit of visuals there, beautiful bit of design for that kit. But the Milan kit was the all-white, the classic Milan all-white, the European kit. They see it as their lucky kit for European Cup finals. So you get Milan have won it 7 times. They're the club that have won it most after Real Madrid, who've won it more than twice that. So Real Madrid mostly wearing their all-white when they went. They've worn away strips as well, obviously. But so all-white, very much a winning the European Cup kind of kit. The Bayern twice, their 3 in a row in the mid-70s, they wore their all-white away kit. Aston Villa wearing all-white away kit when they won it for the only time in 82, although it did have the pinstripes and all. But you get the idea about the all-white kit in the old European Cup final. They were sponsored by Opel, the car manufacturer Opel. They had that across them because there's something happened in deregulation. It's connected to Eurovision. The Eurovision Song Contest comes out of the first kind of agreement for Europe-wide television, Europe-wide events from TV, and there was something to do with advertising. Is it the deregulation that lets it, like Sky, BT Sports, Premier Sports, TNT, whatever. Eventually, it leads to all that. It was really kicking in, which was the dream come true of UEFA at that point in time. So both teams, the first time any team was allowed to wear shirt advertising, but both teams were wearing shirt advertising. The first time ever in the European Cup / Champions League final. I know what you're thinking about. What about shirt advertising as in no the kit manufacturer, because you're thinking about Liverpool in 1981 and the Parc des Princes when they're playing Real Madrid, and the Liverpool players had to cover up the umbro. They took a bit of tape. It was odd. Bits of tape. It'd obviously just been something that was agreed just right before the game, or a demand that was placed on them by UEFA. You've got to get the tape over. You've got to cover up that umbro sign. That's a kit manufacturer. You're advertising the kit manufacturer. So they've got it over. We all had it. The Rangers kit had it at that point in time in the 70s into the 80s, where the wee diamond, the umbro. Is it Humbertson Brothers? Umbros, a kind of. Is that a portmanteau word, or is that a? You compress the two. Was it a contraction, a compound? I think it's a portmanteau. Anyway, umbro was it was the bit of tape over it. You can see it if you just look up 1981 European Cup final, Liverpool, the Alan Kennedy goal beating Real Madrid in the Parc des Princes. You just get any action shots you can get of that, and you'll notice Liverpool on their shorts and on their top, they've got a little bit of tape, a little bit of masking tape over the top of it, because. But then you think, well, what about Leeds United in the 75 European Cup final against Bayern Munich in the exact same stadium in the Parc des Princes? They've got the big massive Admiral badge on theirs. And Bayern Munich, by the way, there's 3 European Cup finals in the trot in the 70s before Liverpool even got to the Parc des Princes in 81, although Liverpool were in the first European Cup final. They won the next 2 European Cups after Bayern's 3 in a row. They had the trefoil, they had the Adidas trefoil and an actual strip. There was no crest on the Bayern kit in those days. There's no crest in most kits in those days. And the crest, the actual club crest, was only a thing that kind of happened in the 60s into the 70s. That developed. Before then, you'd only have a crest in like the FA Cup final. Teams get big, massive, super ornate crests. Wearing a crest on your kit. You didn't do that in regular league games. You just had your colours. And that was a classic. I still really love the Rangers kits of the old days. It was just blue. No RFC on it, and that's far less a manufacturer's logo, just the blue, the white shorts and the red and black socks is uber staunch. But the Bayern were wearing the 3 European Cup finals in the trot, be all red or all white, and actually one of them went to a replay. 74, the only European Cup final or Champions League final to go to a replay. So they played 4 games in winning those 3 successive European Cups in the 70s. All of them, they were all white or all red, no crest, but the Adidas trefoil and the 3 stripes down the sleeve of, and it was long sleeve shorts they were wearing, and the shorts, and round the fold of the socks. Is it De Marca mit dem drei Riemen, or the Riemen mit dem drei Marca? My German's absolutely awful, but the sign that the brand of the 3 stripes basically is what they call it in Germany. That's it. But everybody knew, looking at Bayern, that's Adidas, and they had the trefoil, actual Adidas thing there. They didn't have to wear tape over that. Real Madrid, who Liverpool were playing in the 1981 European Cup final, I'm sure they were wearing Adidas kit. Did they have the 3 stripes down their sleeves as well? That's blatant. Everybody knows that's Adidas' thing. It's almost like Adidas. Adolf Dassler being in Germany, you get the Swiss Germans, Switzerland's kind of involved in UEFA competition and stuff like that. Maybe just knew the right people to talk to, and it was, maybe I'm not saying bribes, some sort of contract they were coming to. I don't think Michel Platini and Sepp Blatter, FIFA, UEFA, getting halfway stuff in Switzerland again this week. Maybe they're completely innocent. They're getting away with these charges of fraud that keep following them everywhere. What I'm trying to say, though, the thing, like Lecoq Sportif, the Saint-Etienne, who played against Hampden against Bayern in the third of the 3 in a row, 76 European Cup final, classic green, a beautiful jersey. People even know, a Rangers fan like me, it's green, but it's got red, white and blue trim on it. That was the thing that really set it over the edge. And the black shorts they wore with it that night as well, quite special. But Lecoq Sportif, the big Lecoq Sportif, starts playing, no tape worn over that. So it's almost like they knew who to talk to, the manufacturers of these kits, and just maybe just give them a little bit of a financial incentive to no tape over over our kits manufacturers. But the thing I'm trying to talk about here, would you let me get on to the point, which is the 1995 Champions League final. The thing I always remember was at kickoff. Was it Brian Moore? Is he still on the go? That he said, I know it was ITV. Patrick Kluivert scoring the only goal of the game. You remember that? Be 5 minutes to go. Frank Rijkaard had played for Milan in the 1990 final at the Prater Stadium, or the Ernst Happel Stadium in Vienna, the National Stadium in Vienna, and scored the only goal of the game. And here was Frank Rijkaard playing for Ajax, playing against Milan in the 5 years later, and he won again, 1-0. But the announcement, it was said Ajax have to win this final to qualify for the Champions League group stages next season. They'd already won the Eredivisie that season, or retained it, whatever, but it was, they have to win this final. They have to win the Champions League final in order to qualify for the following season's group stages of the Champions League. But Blackburn Rovers are in. Blackburn Rovers, they're in. They're directly in those champions. Now, Ajax were in their fifth, at this point it was their fifth final of the European Cup / Champions League. First time in the Champions League era, but they'd won the European Cup 3 in a row in the 70s, early 70s. They lost the 69 final. They won the Cup Winners' Cup in 1987, and then they lost the final the following season. They failed to retain it, as so many clubs did. They would lose the following season's final, so many holders of the Cup Winners' Cup. And they won the 1992 UEFA Cup. They had won all 3 of the extant European competitions, as they were in 1995, at kick-off in this 1995 Champions League final, and they'd won the biggest one of them 3 times in the trot already in their history. Blackburn Rovers at that point in time had played 1 tie, 2 games total in European competition, and they lost that tie to Trelleborgs, a part-time team from Sweden who I don't even think are in the top flight of Swedish football just now. In Swedish football, as you know, the national team fantastic, but their domestics, it doesn't have a lot of money. It doesn't have the same kind of money as perhaps the English top flight does. So Blackburn Rovers, who had just won the English, it was mentioned by Brian Moore or whoever was doing the commentary before the game, because we're still at the point where only the champions and the holders could qualify for the Champions League. They hadn't got, it was a couple of seasons before they got into changing that, but Blackburn had just won the English title for the first time in, it's either 79 or 81 years, I can never remember. 8 decades anyway, let's just round it up to 8 decades. First time Blackburn Rovers had been champions of England in 8 decades, and only the third time ever in their history, and they'd played 1 tie in European football, and it was the UEFA Cup that season. It was the first round tie, and they lost it. They got put out straight away. Whereas Ajax, European royalty, and already champions of their country as well, were going to have to, because the population, is it 16 million in the Netherlands? England, 60 million. What I'm trying to say to you at the very start of this, the Freddy Rumsen of Rangers podcast. You know, you get Don Draper. Gersnet is the Don Draper in his office. You get the secretary, the beautiful but really, you know, quite dangerous secretary, and she's quite right to be dangerous because it's a man's world, and she's got to have her wits about her. Who's sitting outside? Is it Jane Siegel? Jane Seeger? That's what she's the beautiful. She's sitting outside his office at his desk, and she's getting chatted up by. She's like, I would say, heart and hand. And you get the Rangers Review. Ken Cosgrove, the Rangers Review, is over trying to chat her job. I'm the podcast that comes out and does Eine Kleine Nacht music on the fly of my trousers, you know, just to break up the party there. That's it. But I want you to know that I know Uefa Are Bent. As this pod of mine proceeds tonight, I want you to know from the outset that I know exactly how bent, hypocritical, venal Uefa are. That's not an issue. The next thing I want you to know is a few years before that Champions League final in 1995, in fact, the first European Cup final, I remember the first European football match, I remember it, 1977 European Cup final, Liverpool against Borussia Mönchengladbach. That year, 77, is when most of my memories start. I went to my first Rangers game that year as well. I barely remember that as well, but I do remember things I said, and I remember that if I remember conversations, it's at least 1977. So this incident, 77, 78, I'm going to talk about, it be kind of late 70s. I am 7, 8, 9 years old tops, and we stayed in this scheme, Eglinton Square of Drogheda. It's still there. Go and have a look at it, Eglinton Square of Drogheda. I think it's kind of social housing. I think it's some sort of social housing thing. There's all pebbles and what have you, and there's like an access road at the back of it, with lots of garages and the fences of folks. So we'd play up there, we'd play football up there and that kind of thing as well. And there's the main road, the Rye Road, going down onto the the high road, the Conway Alpine Stores, which was the shop that was part of this kind of scheme. I think it's the kind of place that urban planners would develop. But I think it was newly built at the time, and we moved in there early 70s when my sister came along. Kind of 72, my sister was born the same year Rangers won the Copland Cup. I was a few years older, so I was at mum and dad. Right, we got to move. We moved to this new place, and it was great. It was all young families, and it was like it worked. You had the damage that was done in Glasgow. The urban planners in Glasgow did more damage than the Luftwaffe had done during the Second World War. That famous expression. A lot of beautiful buildings knocked down, tore communities apart. But this definitely worked and encouraging the community, because everybody, it doesn't matter where you live. If you're a young, you've got your gang, haven't you? You've got your wee squad. Certainly in my age anyway. I'm 55 now, so I'm talking about my childhood. Things were very different, but it definitely worked. And we stayed down, but there's two of the blocks. There's a lot of upstairs, downstairs houses, kind of rows of them, and they all kind of congregated in this wee square, which you can see when you just drive past it. It's this wee square. It's completely flat. It's just got these kind of decorations, kind of made out of pebbles and concrete and that, which used to drive around on our wee bikes and that. And the houses at the bottom of each, my pal Alan Fruit, he stayed in the one across the road. It was upstairs, downstairs, up. Is it cottage flats or something they call it? There's an actual term for what they're called, but it's like one house on the ground floor, one house, exact same layout, and the second floor, it's only 2 floors, and on the first floor, it's upstairs, downstairs kind of scenario. And we got on great with the neighbours, everybody seemed to go on great. There was parties, it was the kind of 70s, so folk were all having house parties. Wife swapping, I don't know, I was too young to realise. I was too busy playing my Airfix soldiers and trying to get wee fly drinks at Baby Sham. But outside, because of the stairway that took us up to it, was the bunchies, folk were called the bunchies upstairs. And it was two lassies the same age as me and my sister, corresponding ages. We used to go up there every now and then, they had Lego. I always remember, we didn't have Lego, they had Lego. It was great, played the Lego up there, and I'd always have to go back downstairs before I'd had a chance to finish my house and what have you. But because of the stairwell to go up to theirs, the front of the house was a bit long. Outside there was a big massive step. It was basically like a plinth. And it's not a big deal if you see it now. You wouldn't even look at it. You wouldn't even pay it. It's basically just a one step up, and that's you're going to be tiny close to go into whatever house you're going to. But when you're a kid, it was fantastic. It was like massive, and I'd get my wee soldiers out, my OOHO scale kind of infantry, and I would have those little wee cracks in the concrete. I'd use them as like bunkers and that for this to sit in, and my mate would come in, we'd play and all that. But also, I just remember this one night, we're all congregated, the entire squad, for the Mathesons and Alan Frew and the Dunlops and that. We're all sitting there, and there must be about 12 of us sitting all along this step. And we're talking, we're going to play Cowboys and Indians. I know. It was it's like when you're a kid, it's total business. Everything's business. We're going to play, and it's serious. So what we're going to do, we're going to play Cowboys and Indians. And I know it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be. It's Native Americans or First Americans or Indigenous Americans. But this is the terminology we used in those days. And of course, everybody straight away wants to be a cowboy. I'll be a cowboy. I'll be a cowboy. And it was we didn't have enough Indians. This isn't going to work. John Donegan, who's a bit older, a 2 years older than me, and always seemed wiser. He got up and he stood in front of us all, faced us. We were looking past him onto the square and all that, but he was talking to us. It was like a lecture. I always remember this. And he was the guy that explained to us. Remember him saying, but see, in America, it was actually us, like white folk, that went over to America first. The Indians have been there. They've been there forever. And we went over and we stole the land for them. That's why they're always attacking the cowboys and that in the films. Because they're angry, because they stole their... We're the bad guys. They're actually the good guys. And it backfired, because I'm going to be an Indian, I'm going to be an Indian, I'm going to be an Indian. And it gets to the stage where, it ends up with me this time last year. I'm staying in a hotel in Cherokee, which is basically a reservation. It's got a casino and all that on it. Cherokee it's in Cherokee, but it's the Cherokee Nation on the eastern seaboard. But it's fantastic. But what I'm trying to say is that's my first ever moment of woke. It won't be. There'll be other stuff my dad would come out with stuff like this as well. just to be contrary. Sometimes I'll be watching stuff and they tell me, well, actually, not all Germans were Nazis, Alexander, so we can't say they were all, kill the Germans. I'm watching all that, because it's always British or Jerry's. British and Jerry, nobody wanted to be a Jerry, and cowboys and Indians, nobody wanted to be an Indian, because we thought the Indians were the bad guys, but there they go, John Dunnigan, I always remember that. I don't know what he's up to these days, I don't know if he's still on the go, but I always remember him saying that, and that was my first moment of, woke. That's probably what we call it. Yeah, some folk might call it education, but you could say that's my first moment of woke. So I've got the woke, and I've got Uefa Are Bent. Just I've got all under control. I mean, John Dunn was really trying to tell me you call it critical race theory now, wouldn't you? You call it critical race theory. Try to make me ashamed of my white skin. Try to make me transition into a Native American. Just you go into school these days. So anyway, this is your FATEC. It's all very well beating Celtic at Parkhead for the first time in 4.5 years to complete a first ever back-to-back win over Celtic since 55 season, and it's all very well getting ourselves into the quarterfinals of European competition, but we are going to Dens Park, which has been our nemesis. This is the kind of place where we've fallen down for the last year. Let's see what your interim management is really made of, Barry, and also we gave our directors a hell of a time at the beginning of the season because they didn't have Ibrox ready, because we're doing work on the Copland Road stand. Much needed work on the Copland Road stand, but it was delayed over the summer. It wasn't finished in time for the start of the new season, and we were creating merry hell, giving our directors a hell of a time because the Copland Road stand wasn't open at the beginning of the season. We had to go and play at Hampden, and now we're going to make sure that we're the ones shutting the Copland Road stand before the end of the season, because the semi-final of the Europa League being played at Ibrox, we're going to express our human rights to protest woke, and we're going to get that thing shut down. But it's our choice this time, so that's absolutely okay. Preview pod coming to you in association with Gersnet, the Don Draper, as I say, of Rangers podcasts. It's on every Friday at 9 p.m, every Sunday 9:30 p.m, the flagship show. Well, not during the international break, it wasn't on last weekend, so I'm happy to announce that it's going to be back this weekend. Check out Gersnet live on its YouTube channel, the Gersnet YouTube channel, tomorrow night, Friday, 9 p.m. I don't know who's lined up yet, but they will look after you much, very much, to discuss about Rangers these days. I'm sponsored by that, and I'm also sponsored by having the right just to be a white man in my own country. I'm sponsored by the right to be a heterosexual white man. There's only two genders. A Protestant. I'm not actually a Protestant. I'm not a Catholic. I wasn't christened in any religion. I'm not. I went to a non-denominational school, a Prodi school, you might call it. But all lives matter. I want to make that. I'm sponsored by that. By just getting back to being ashamed to be, a woman's man. No time to talk. I mean, that's masculinity. It's been outlawed practically, isn't it? And I think I just want to get back to being the most macho thing. But it's the thing with John Travolta at the beginning of Saturday Night Fever. He was discussing this with multiple man. It's the coolest thing. It's the sexiest thing ever. The coolest guy. You just weren't afraid to be a bloke in the days when you got the hairdryer and you could get your hair. You see, he gets his hair all done, and he's bald now, isn't he? He's bald. I can't imagine what that's like to have had a good head of hair when you were a young man, and then suddenly you find yourself in middle age and you're bald. It's a tragedy. But you got your jewellery on. It was chains. It was chains. It wasn't jewellery. And you got your perfume on. I mean, sorry, aftershave. You got your musk on you, and you got your wee lovely wee jerkin, your wee leather jacket. You got your clobber on there like a man's outfit. I'm sponsored by that kind of thing. I want to be like a real man again. We're allowed to be a real man. Not this LGBTQ plus flags. They're trying to make our children have sex changes at school. No, just I want to be a straight white man wearing my Fred Perry's. They became trendy because of the rude boys from Jamaica, who aren't even originally getting brought over from Africa. Originally, I just want to be a white, tough guy listening to macho music like the Bee Gees, falsetto, big hairy guys, chest open, jewellery everywhere, the shirts, big flouncy shirts open, and the flares, which are basically like skirts at the bottom of your trousers. But oh man, a heterosexual man, it's just a crime these days. Just be a white, Protestant, British, heterosexual man. I just wanted to and listen to proper music because white heterosexual classical music, and it's just basically classical music. That's all you've got. If it's because all the fun music, all the popular music, it's just all influenced by black folks. So I'm going to have to abandon that if I want to be Oh, yes, it's pretty boring, actually, to be honest. And my clothes, I'll get the casual gear on. Get the casual gear on. I'll get my hair plugs in. Turkey, and I'll get the teeth done Turkey. Like real men, like not just be gay guys that be accused of getting themselves overdressed and what have you. And you've got to be the wee bum bags that you wear across your chin. No, that's tough these days, the boys. But it's probably get flares inside them. I don't mean flares that you used to wear in the 70s when you were a hooligan with your platform shoes or the guy kicking the hell at each other on the pitch at Old Trafford in the 70s footage, but that's like platform shoes that are worn by women, high heels, basically Cuban heels and stuff like that. But that's macho, isn't it? That's manly. It's manly stuff, isn't it? I got sleeve tattoos these days. That's totally everybody's got the sleeve tattoos. Like, Mara Salvatrucha, kind of Central American prison gangs, all known for raping the shit. But I think if you're raping blokes, that's no gay. I think if you're raping blokes in prison, that's all right. That's tough. That's actually the most macho thing you can possibly do. So we're all going to get the sleeve tattoos because that makes us totally heterosexual males. I'm struggling really to think of something that's kind of the hair. I mean, like Graham Souness, a man like Graham Souness, best man to Dale Winton. That time Dale Winton pretended he was getting married to a woman. But Souness, no, but the budgie smugglers and him and Trevor Francis, and their suntan and barely anything in the shape of trunks being worn in the Italian Riviera, just going boating together. He got his ears pinned back. He got his ears pinned back. Graham Souness, he thought his ears were too kind of Dumbo like, so he got cosmetic surgery. But it's been a man who got slashed, he got his ears slashed, and he nailed them back there. Probably himself. He probably did it with a hammer and a rusty old nail because he did it in a manly sort of way. Graham Souness, I mean, his outfits are fantastic. On the Graham, you see him on Sky and what have you. I mean, he's not doing it anymore, but it's all really, I mean, it's just proper. I mean, like, proper fashion, obviously, guys. That's done by proper macho guys like Alexander McQueen and the Yves Saint Laurent and Karl Lagerfeld and all that. And Alexander McQueen is proper macho because it's almost like gender and sexuality are the two different things. But no, I'm sponsored by masculinity. I'm sponsored by going down the gym, getting really buff like all the young boys do these days and all the gays did in the films that I used to watch. And it's not. It's different stuff. It's not as simple as I thought it was. Alexander McQueen. Alexander McQueen. I've been to take football out the way, music, kind of movies, TV, good TV, opera, plays, just books that you need. Let's see if you go to exhibitions. I've only been to two that made me cry. All that other stuff always makes me cry. Good football, good music, good whatever, good films, and that always make you cry. Doesn't prove anything. But I made two things exhibition-wise that made me cry. One's Vasa, the ship. It was in the 1620s. It's Sweden. It was in Stockholm. And it's one of the ones. One of the missus is saying, one of her pals at her work had said, "Oh, she'd go and see the Vasa." This woman at my work was in Stockholm on holiday as well. She, "Oh, did she? What is it? It's an old ship. All right, let's go and see an old ship. Sounds fascinating." And there's been documentaries in the telly since then that I've paid attention to. It was an old, just a proper. It was the 1620s. This thing. It was the Swedish Navy, the Swedish king. It was a kind of vanity project, but it's supposed to be the biggest warship in the world or something like that. And they built it right, so it sank the second it got out of the harbour. It sank, and I think it was the mud or whatever's in the water, the biochemicals. I don't really know how these things work. But preserved it. It's a kind of Mary Rose type scenario. So they dug it up years later and they put it in this. It's a beautiful kind of aircraft hangar size place. I was expecting just to go along and it'd be, basically like something the size of a kind of cottage with a wee boat inside. I didn't realise what was happening. And I walked inside and this thing it's intact. And it's just, it's like Pirates of the Caribbean. The whole thing's sitting there and it's out of the water. It's the closest I've ever come to time travel, experiencing time. It's unbelievable. I'm describing it really well here, but it's a very emotional experience. I'm just taken aback by how overwhelming it was, the sheer size of the thing and the fact it's totally intact. And here is the 1620s, right in front of you. And you're walking around, spend the whole day getting absorbed by this thing. It's a tremendous experience. If you're ever in Stockholm, the drink's really expensive. Go and see the Vasa, the warship, the Vasa. And the other thing was going to the Alexander McQueen exhibition at the V&A down in London. Again, this was the message. You know, it's like blokes, we want to be allowed to be heterosexual men. We want to be able to slap them about a bit and all that and just the her indoors giving it all that. That's the way to behave if you're heterosexual male. She was saying she wanted to go and see Alexander McQueen exhibition at the V&A. Oh, well, I get to the fit, but I better gear some to stop her yapping, you know what I mean? Maybe it's me it does on the morning, I'm not sure. But we went, and again, I thought, this is going to be vaguely interesting. I'll just try and get through it best I can. I'll show an interest. I was like an absolute mess by the time I came out of it. It was so inspirational. The guy was just the clothes was the girl who lived up a tree, the Widows of Culloden. That was two of the collections that he had. I'll never forget them. I've got wee postcards. In fact, I'm going to put them up there next time. Now we might do that next podcast I do to make it in any way interesting. I'll put them up there behind me to show that I did actually really take this on board, and it was. I never thought I'd find fashion. Obviously, you know, me putting the gear on and feeling good when I went out for a night out in my teens and my early 20s, and that is obviously it feels good. But this was just, it was so moving. It was absolutely, it was art. It was total art. So that's the fashion. All your fashion, you were in the casual gear. You want to go and be in the, go down the Defender statues and all that kind of stuff, and have a bit of back and forth with the woke polis and all that. On behalf of Boris, because Boris, he's not just after power and what have you. But yeah, it's all made by gay guys. The stuff you're wearing, it's all gay guys that designed it all. You know, Fred Perry, I know he was a British tennis player and that, and probably pretty heterosexual, but it get turned into a fashion by the folk. And then there's a food. Let's just have good British. You know what I'm going to do here, like lasagna, spaghetti, and curries, and dirhams, and kebabs, and your food's like Catholic. It's the Catholic tastes. It's Asian. It's as Muslim as the Quran. I'm sponsored by the sheer preposterousness of that. I spoke to Simon Jordan. I asked Simon Jordan about it, and Simon Jordan said to me, Alec, there is no correlation between intellect and making money. Oh no, that was George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw said that. Simon Jordan, he said to me, suntan, Ibiza, suntan, £100,000 Porsche for my girlfriend at Christmas, suntan, got my watch stolen, suntan, Crystal Palace, hanging about with directors, pretending I'm a man of the people, suntan, my new baby mama, she's in Reform UK, which isn't a political party, it's a corporation. She's on GB News. She's had suicidal thoughts herself, so her belief in capital punishment is probably okay because she's dishing it out. But Simon was saying is that Simon says that, and I think he was being sarcastic here, I think he was using the old air quotes, that when we have the Wembley sign lit up in the flag of a country that suffered some sort of tragedy, they're always suffering tragedy. Woke folk are always suffering a tragedy, aren't they? Paris, getting killed, folk getting killed and all that. But that was by Muslims, so that's all right. We're all right with that one. Charlie Hebdo, that was okay because that was the Muslims and they're even more woke. It gets confusing at times. Or Ukraine or something like that. Or it's LGBTQ, rainbow laces and that. Or they want us to take the knee. They're making us. The UEFA are telling us what to do with that stuff. They're not just saying this is basically a bit of compassion. Folk are into this. Let's go along with it and let's see if we can help out. No, they're telling us to do that. But the minute that's the air quotes, the dirty, unwashed proletariat, that sounds a bit Marxist to me, Simon, but the dirty, unwashed proletariat, that's us, that's the Rangers fans. That's how we've been looked down upon. That's how we've been condescended to by the authorities. The minute we wanted to have a protest and express what the man in the street thinks, we know what Sid Vicious said. He thought he'd met the man in the street, and the man in the street was a cunt, as was Sid Vicious. But I don't, that was the civil rights we're expressing. These banners, the banner saying woke agendas, we don't like that. Keep Europe European or whatever it was. That was us. We were the proletariat, and they don't like that. UEFA don't like that. It's funny, isn't it? It's funny. At what point was Simon, when his wife was, he's the mother of his Wayne, is in Reform UK, and she's wanting capital punishment, and she's obviously against Europe. She's in the Brexit party before she's in capital. She won The Apprentice, but Simon wears really nice suits. He's really well coiffured. So, survived the prostate cancer. The two of them put a lot of money into charity, what have you, cover I don't think so. Obviously, they're a man and woman of the people, but it's funny how they tell you the stuff that you do. That's oppressive. That's oppressive. But your freedom of expression is to go against the wokes, is to shout that down. It's not to take money off them, not to just watch while they're stealing your money. And Simon, it was £100,000. It was Noel Gallagher's ex-wife. Remember Simon Jordan was going out there and he got her a Porsche for Christmas. He had a column in the Guardian. I was at the Observer. Same thing, or it used to be anyway. It did Simon Jordan. So obviously he's Michelle Dewberry. That's his wife. But Simon, he was speaking up on behalf of the Rangers support, and we all had to take notice of that apparently because his opinion's always controversial. The dark blue of Scotland last Sunday. I was at the Scotland game last Sunday, and going for the dark blue of Scotland, the dark blue of Dundee. This Saturday, dark, dank, dense park. Had it been a 3 p.m. kickoff, it wouldn't have been live on the telly, I suppose. But why has it been pushed back to 5:30? Why is it 5:30? It's no Scottish Cup, we know that for a fact. It's no the League Cup. It's no on Premier Sporting, it's on Sky. The game, it's going to be Rangers away game. It's going to be live on the telly. But why not have it at 12:30? It's almost like they've decided to make the best of the last day of the year before the clocks are going to go forward. We're going to spring forward a few hours after this game finishes. It's the last properly dark night, so they're trying to get Rangers in there in a properly dark night, just so we have to go to dark, dismal dens again, where it all went to pieces for Philip Clement. We drew with Hibs, didn't we, after beating Celtic, pounding Celtic at Ibrox on the 2nd of January. We went to Easter Road and we had a 2-goal lead and we mucked that up. It ended up a 3 straw, and then we go to Dens the game after that, trying to prove that we could get out of that funk of having conceded 3 goals, and it's a draw, and it's just, that's it. It's just not happening at all. Like last season, as it was starting to feel, we'd lost 3 goals at Ross County in Dingwall. And then the next game was at Dens, and we had to prove that we weren't going to we'd get beat after Ross County at that time. That we're still going to be able to fight and keep our league campaign alive. And we drew 0-0 at Dens, and that's what off. It just feels like, why do you have to go there in the dark again? Remember the protest there? It was the tennis balls. That was a different game altogether at Dens. It was the tennis balls we threw on the park there. Listen, folks, thanks very much for your fantastic response to the podcast I did at this time last Thursday, international break. Just threw out a couple of podcasts, and I was saying during that podcast I should have done a few more pods because it just ends up with a 1 hour 45 minute pod as it did last week. Try to catch up with everything that happens involving Rangers, even when Rangers aren't playing. It makes it really long. It means the pod starts getting out of sync. If the pod's too long, my mouth, not that any of you really want to look at my face, you'll prefer just to listen to it if you have to deal with it at all. My mouth starts getting out of sync with the words that are coming out of them. But considering that, and the fact that during the pod I was actually giving up while I was doing the pod, I should just chuck this, I should just put this a separate pod, this next bit I'm going to talk about. Everybody getting in touch, really kind comments, a really big response to it, and I tried to get in touch, tried to get back to absolutely everybody, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed chatting with folk on the comments below. The Celtic game, the post-match reaction pod for the Celtic game, we won at Parkhead. I don't think I've replied to anybody. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about everybody. I know you don't get in touch, hoping I'm going to get back to you with my usual 1,000-word reply. I bore you enough on the actual pods themselves, but I think that was it. It was such a kind of, thank God, moment. The relief kicked in. It's been 4.5 years since we've beat them there. It was just lovely, and I just, the intensity of the Fenerbahce game, going to penalties and what have you, and then all the garbage started to the banner. The banner itself was garbage, the reaction's been garbage, the punishment's been garbage, and we're going to have to talk about that tonight. So we're in the same situation again, where I should have done a few more pods, because there was lovely things to talk about this week as well, or sad things, but sad. And I want to be really respectful about, which obviously was the 30th anniversary of the passing of Davie Cooper. Davie Cooper dying 30 years ago on Sunday. The day I was at Hampden for the Scotland against Greece Nations League promotion relegation playoff match. Quite an eventful game, quite a spectacular thing when the opposition just turns up and wins 3-0. I was worried it was going to go to penalties in extra time on a Sunday night, and within 13 seconds of the second half starting, I knew it wasn't going to go extra time in penalties. So that was one positive that came from it. I know a lot of you don't like Scotland, but they had it was the that Sunday was the 30th anniversary of the shocking death, as it was back in 1995, of Davie Cooper. And his picture was up. They put that brilliant picture of him. He's obviously a young man in this kind of 78 World Cup type strip Scotland had. I think it might have been 79 or 80 or something like that. He got his photograph taken. He got his first cap for Scotland. But it's that kind of Umbro kit. And it's a cracking photograph of him, because Coop, super cool guy, but this one he's totally beaming. And they put that up on the big screens, and there was a round of applause for him, because quite rightly the day at Hampden was taken up with tributes to Dennis Law, which were really beautifully done. Our Ballon d'Or, I thought that was Scotland's only Ballon d'Or. That's a fantastic tribute. But it was nice Davie Cooper got a mention at Hampden. As I sat right when I was 3, I didn't renew my membership of the Tartan Army Travel Club or the Scotland Supporters Club, whatever I needed to guarantee to get yourself seats. And now that we've been relegated back into Group B, maybe there'll be less need to have that to guarantee yourself a seat for the games. I don't like to miss a Scotland game at home, particularly the ones at Hampden. But I'd forgot to do that, and so I went online, and there's only a few seats left. There's really good crowds at these games. And I ended up getting a ticket. It's like basically 3 rows for the front of the Celtic end. The views like from behind the goals at the best of times at Hampden, but it was actually quite good in terms of you couldn't see the lines. You couldn't see, I think you could see the halfway line. That was it. But the actual goal lines and all that, you couldn't see them at all. Restricted view, only £37. Restricted view. I thought restricted view, there's going to be a discount here. No, it's £37. Just to let you know it's a restricted view, so you know what you're buying. So I got that, and I'm thinking this is the goal. I'm behind the goal at the Celtic end. It's not the same netting, obviously. Not the netting. Noticeable that the nettings had changed for probably Davie Cooper's 2 most famous goals. That goal in the League Cup final against Aberdeen, the 87-88 League Cup final against Aberdeen, and the goal against Celtic in the Drybrook Cup final a few years before that, best part of a decade before that, where he beat about 25 different players before tucking the ball under the outcoming, I'm going to say, Peter Latchford. Must be Peter Latchford, yeah. Phenomenal goals, and it's quite amazing to be sitting here. And I saw the Coop documentary featuring friends of mine, Ronnie Esplin and Colin Armstrong. Absolutely beautiful documentary put together, but and a few other Will Kent faces from the Rangers players and Rangers podders, associated journalists. Ian Ferguson, John Brown, Ian Durant on it as well. The original Ian Ferguson. All talking about Davie Cooper. It was a beautiful thing. Just over an hour on Rangers TV. I know Rangers TV will have to do content. I've never actually had Rangers TV. I've only done the pay-per-view stuff on it. But I'll obviously do content. They've got a few beautiful things out there on the Rangers official YouTube channel. But this was lovely. It was nice to be able to sit and watch that. Without having to sign up for anything. Just watching it on YouTube. It was a beautiful tribute. And I just want to say my own bit that. I think it gets. I always remember. And I don't know if you see. I've got my Davie Cooper thing behind me, but below it, the single is Cameo's Word Up, and it was. I think it went to number 3. I looked it up. Number 3. I was just checking this in my head. Am I imagining this? But it went to number 3 in the UK charts in September 1986. I remember. I don't know if it was a bank holiday or I'd deliberately taken the day off. But when we beat Celtic, the first Old Firm game in the league, the first league Old Firm game that Souness was involved in. Souness took over his first full season in charge, 86-87, and we eventually won the title for the first time in 9 years. But you'll remember, and it's talked about in the Coop documentary, where we beat Celtic at Ibrox. We beat them by 1-0, and it was in a Sunday. I think it was the first Old Firm game ever played on a Sunday. Certainly the first league, I think it was the first Scottish League game. Live on the telly on a Sunday, perhaps. Anyway, it was really unusual. I don't know if I took a deliberately... I'd started working at that point in time. I don't know if I deliberately took a day off, knowing, I'm going to football on a Sunday, that'll be weird, or if it was a bank holiday. But I remember on the Monday, recorded the game on VHS or Betamax, whatever it was. It was on BBC. I was at the game. My pals were in the East Enclosure. We made a banner. We made up a banner. It's kind of embarrassing to think about it now. It wasn't like the one. It was somebody with Maurice Johnston. I can't remember. Alan McCoy's been better than Maurice Johnston or something. But we're in the East Enclosure that day, and it was great. And we beat them 1-0. It was Ian Durant goal, set up the assist, world-class assist for Davie Cooper. But I remember the next day, I don't know if it was actually the wind up of the coverage on the BBC had done a wee montage, and it was Word Up Cameo, but I'd bought the single. And I remember sitting, I still had a turntable in my bedroom at that time. I was like 17, and I put it on. I remember putting that on the next day as well, on the Monday, listening to that, and it was starting to remind me just of us beating Celtic. It was all merging in together. But it was on the charts at the very same time. It was the end. It was August 31st or August, at the very end of August. The game against Celtic that we won by a goal to 0. And it keeps showing you the layoff, the Davie Cooper layoff for that goal. They puts it into the path of Ian Durrant, who then famously just completely ignores him for the celebration. Ian Durrant just running up to the east enclosure, and there's a picture, and I think it was a Daily Record. I've scored it, and you're somewhere. I'm in it. You can see me and my mates in it going absolutely mental as Ian Durrant runs up to the east enclosure. But it was Paul Mariner of England, because the game was on a Sunday. It was really unusual in those days. All these personalities got to go to all these personality footballers who would have been playing. And sort of Paul Mariner, was it last year Paul Mariner passed away? He died as well, but England international. He played in the World Cup in '82, scored goals in the World Cup, and that won the UEFA Cup with Ipswich in '81, and he was at the game, and he'd been interviewed by the Daily Record afterwards, and he said that fella's got a left leg like a tin opener. If I'd tried that, I'd have been in traction for months. And he was talking about the Cooper layoff. He was talking about the Cooper layoff for Ian Durrant to score the only goal of the game in the second half and at the Copland Road stand. And that was the thing, we took it for granted. We just took it for granted. That's what Davie Cooper did. He's running towards he's running from left to right, across the kind of box, across the front of the Celtic box. And as Ian Durrant comes up kind of behind him almost and goes in through the middle, towards the middle of the box, Davie Cooper, who's taken the entire Celtic defence and midfield in his general direction, he's able to keep running that direction towards east enclosure while he lays it off with his left foot to his left hand side, and just, they call it a reverse ball now, or maybe a lay off, whatever, but it's unbelievable what he did. And it took another professional footballer from the top level to actually pinpoint the world class genius of what Davie Cooper had did that day, making the difference, letting Ian Durrant go through and put the ball in the back of the net. I was at that game. I've told you before, I don't want to keep boring you with this, but I was at the game, the 87-88 League Cup final. My mate and I were, we got the train for Coherent. My mate stayed in Coherent, and so we got the train from Coherent up to Hampden, or up to Central anyway, and it was the Stranraer train, so there was two boys from Northern Ireland, older guys than us, but they'd never been on the Rangers end, and we had terrace and tickets. We had tickets for the old Section J, Section H, whatever it was, the old Rangers end at Hampden, and we'd been in the terrace plenty of times, and they had tickets for the main stand, and they said to us, do you want to swap, because we don't want the main stand experience, we want to go the old terrace, the Rangers end. Absolutely no problem. I think we tried to give them the difference, but they weren't having it at all. Lovely fellas, and it was like in front of the director's box. It was dead centre, and it was the best view I've ever had. Think of any football match. You felt as if the whole of Hampden to yourself, and what a game to watch. 3 each goes to penalties, and I just, as everybody it was talked about in the Coop documentary on Rangers TV that came out this week, about the fact there's just that little pause, just that little moment where the ball hits the net so quickly that the crowd doesn't have a chance to react, and also everybody's kind of thinking to themselves, have we just seen that? It's the best free kick I have ever seen live. It has to be. I wonder, just accuracy, viciousness, everything, and to watch it, to be there. Something. I was at Hampden when Zinedine Zidane scored that goal in the Champions League final for Real Madrid against Bayer Leverkusen. That was nothing compared to this free kick that Davie Cooper hit that day. I was in the Celtic ends, behind that one. I wasn't at the Driver Cup final in '79 when he scored the wonder goal against Celtic, but I was in the Rangers end when he scored that penalty against Celtic in the League Cup final. What a record he had in the League Cup final! The goals he scored in the League Cup final, Davie Cooper. And I was in the Rangers end. Sorry, that day, the penalty that he scores that they open the Coop documentary with. I was there when he scored the free kick against Australia for Scotland that made the difference. Frank McAvenny then followed up with a second for Scotland on the night, and we drew 0-0. A tough game back over in Australia in the second leg of the World Cup playoff. And he scored the penalty against Wales in Cardiff the night Jock Stein died. A penalty that was the only reason we were in the playoff, the only reason we made it to that World Cup. The pressure It's absolutely unbelievable. I saw some amazing goals scored by Davie Cooper. And I remember this going to Parkhead. I was talking about how I was at the game when we won at Parkhead for the first time in 9 years. Davie Cooper played every one of the games practically. And he would score against Celtic. Showed you a couple of the goals. He scores with a header. 3 each game I wasn't at. That was in the kind of early days of that run of not winning at Parkhead. But there's some amazing. We beat 3-2 that one. I think it was when we get beat 3-2, but Cooper scored the header. But Davie Cooper would score equalisers and that when we drew games there. I think he gets sent off at Parkhead as well. He just loved playing against Celtic. I was again, we beat them 3-0. It wasn't on television. It is on. There's going to cine. There's footage, like a home video footage on YouTube somewhere. It's November 1985, I think. Just out the blue. We were terrible that season. We beat Celtic 3-0 at Ibrox, and Cooper scored, I think, the second goal, an absolute belter at the start of the second half. It's just the goal he scores against Hearts at Tynecastle, where he seems to beat everybody down the left wing, and he comes in and he stabs it into net. It's like a summertime game. It's August. It's early season. That was the game I got in late. I didn't have a ticket, and somebody gave me a half of the ticket. I was talking about that on a pod recently again in Cooper. I was on the old Gorgie Road end at Tynecastle when Coop poked that one in after beating just everybody on the park. It was just, I think people confuse the fact, especially detractors of Rangers might think, well, it's because the guy died young. He died at 39 years old. That's why there's such almost a cult round about him with the Rangers support. And I remember, I think I was at my girlfriend's. She was up in Gourock at the time. I'm sure I was making my way back home. I was getting the bus from Largs to Ardrossan when I heard that he'd collapsed. And then I just remember being in the house, my mum and dad's house. I was still staying with mum and dad at that time. I wasn't there a lot, but I was strictly speaking, that was my home. And my sister, she was working in the bookies in Saltcoats, and she phoned me at home just after it had broken on the television. Just totally inconsolable. And it was a massive shock for him to die. So he was still playing, as they pointed out. He was at Clydebank, still playing at 39 years of age when he died. But it wasn't just that. It was the fact that it wasn't just my age. My age made it more kind of prevalent, more affecting, because he'd been the first season. I went to see Rangers in 1976-77 season for the first time. Then Cooper signed the following season, and we won the treble. And then he was the guy that was just there when we singularly failed to win the league for the next kind of 8 years, and on 8-9 years. And he was always the we had this new stadium, we had this state-of-the-art stadium, and we had the coloured seats, and it's like even that was kind of screaming failure at us because the seats were empty so much of the time. And it was like Davie Cooper was the one thing we had that was an actual success, that was of Rangers standard consistently through. We didn't even have the support that we're supposed to have as Rangers. We had a stadium, but even we had a stadium that was consistent with our standards, but it was becoming like a white elephant at that point in time because it was so empty so often. It was Davie Cooper was just basically keeping us hanging in there for the whole time. And I was a kid. It's that time of your life going from like kind of 9 till like 16, 17, when your club means so much to you, so much. Far too much, and that's how I understand. The boys that have put up that stupid banner during the Fenerbahce game in the Copland Road. It's a confusing time of life, but you need things that are consistent. You need as much consistency. You need stuff you can depend on, and Davie Cooper was in that time of life somebody could depend on, somebody Rangers could depend on, and he was the only thing reminding us we were proper. I know I've always got memorabilia here. I think I might have touched on it once before. I didn't know what to say, but it's the 30th anniversary of the man's death. We'll maybe not talk about it again. It was the fact he died so young made it horrific, but it's what he meant to Rangers. It's what he actually did, and his ability was world class. And I'm glad they keep making documentaries like this to show people exactly what he did do with a football, and it got to the stage to say we just took it for granted that he could do these things. It was just something we saw all the time when Davie Cooper was playing. It was two things. the 4 each game, you'll have seen footage of this towards the end of 85-86, and we beat them 3-0 Celtic, the first game at Ibrox in the league that season, and then the second one was a 4 each game, which if we'd won it, Celtic wouldn't have won the league. They won the league in the last day of the season, remember, on goal difference from Hearts. We didn't know that at the time, though. It looked like Hearts were certainties to win the title. But that 4 each game, my mate Ronnie, Dingy, Gary Bell, Ronnie and Dingy, we were down the front of the Govan stand, kind of around about the halfway line. With tickets, and just tickets for the front. It wasn't season tickets at Ibrox, it was just season tickets for the main stand, probably. But we get tickets for the very front row of the Govan, and it was paying down all day. We were soaked to the skin. But of course, we went 3-1 down in that game. You know, Celtic get, was it Wally McStay sent off? Had somebody sent off? And we started coming back into it, and I remember sitting on the whole of the Celtic end. It feels like the Celtic end was right and tappy. I remember we're 3-1 up, and they're singing Roman and the Gloaming. And it was one of them ones, yeah, bastards. He's, I fucking hate you. This is just shite, life's shite. So we were like 16, 17 at the time. And then the Rangers fight back to 3 each, and then we go 4-3 up. And I think it's when we went 4-3 up that me, Ronnie and Dingy just got soaking it. Gary, we're all lifting each other up and all that and going absolutely mental. You know, because Rangers had battered in 3 goals in quick style to go for 3-1 down to winning 4-3 against Celtic. The place was going absolutely ballistic. And Gary fell over. He went over the front onto the track side, and it was the rain was so intense. There was a kind of har coming up off the pitch, and it sounds like I'm over romanticising this, but it's basically it was almost kind of misty with the amount of rain. And I don't know if I climbed over onto the pitch. It was a kind of, we weren't drunk or anything like that. Well, still at that age, we're trying to get away with having a drink every now and then, but we weren't drunk. Just ecstatic, and I think I went over onto the track as well just to lift Gary back over. Not that he needed, I don't know what was happening, but I just went over to kind of lift him back over, you know, and Ronnie's helping. And just at that, because we're right in the halfway line, the teams are coming back to take their positions, to take the centre. So Coop's coming up to Davie Cooper's coming up to his spot on the left wing, and he's basically like there. He's just walking right towards, and because we were falling about on the actual track, we stood out particularly in all the bedlam, and his eyes just kind of locked on us, and it's like the three of us just stood there, like frozen in time. I think we might have been thinking, is Davie Cooper going to geeze around? You shouldn't have been in the park, you know, Gaff. And we looked at him, and he just went, "Come on!" Like it wasn't even a grim. It was just a kind of lift it, boys, take it higher. Go even more mental. We're loving this, you know. I was fucking magic. Fucking love that man. What a player! And we were just, this complete Celtic equalising. It was a bit crap, but it's a moment I'll never forget. And obviously when he died, I remember going up, and it was a Saturday, the following Saturday. My mate Scott, he's staying in Glasgow. He's from Glasgow, so I got the train up and just met him on a Saturday. And the two of us, in virtual silence, just went out to Ibrox. And we come back after being out at Ibrox, and I remember toasting Davie Cooper, not having a drink in the town, because by 1995, I was 25 years old at the time. But I've got a lot of memorabilia and stuff, and collecting stuff, and a few folk have said to me, "Well, but kits, I don't seem to have a lot of strips," and you might have seen I've had the 82-83 strip. I've still got that, you know, the pinstripe. It's for it was 1980, 82-83 season, 83-84, and 84-85 we started wearing the kind of crew cut that we reprised it a few years ago. The strip that we wore when Soonest arrived, that style of top, and I had that top. And before it even happened, I'd had it printed at 11 Cooper on the back, and I left it at Ibrox that day. I left it outside the gates, and I've never worn another Rangers strip since. That's just my mum had a big birthday, and it was my sister or whatever. We're doing a daft thing. It was me, my mum, my sister, and my dad. And I think sort of my aunties or something like that were all wearing strips. We were wearing like a Rangers strip, and we were like my mum's team kind of thing, you know. So I'd get a goalie's top or something like that, and it was just for me going it printed with daft stuff with my mum on the back. I think that's the only other time I've worn an actual Rangers strip since Davie Cooper died. So that's so I can. That was my kind of. I've never bought or worn another Rangers strip because I just left it. I left it there that day, and Davie Cooper, 30 years on, still sadly missed, but an unqualified legend, just absolutely sensational player. Now, that is an hour, okay? And I've already talked about it a wee bit, the banner stuff and all the nonsense we've heard about it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post this pod, and I'm going to make this a two-parter. And the second part, I will talk about our game against Dundee, and I'll talk about they've got to go together, haven't they? They've got to go together, haven't they? Sorry, I'm out of sync. My mouth's out of sync with it. I'm going to have to just go for it and get it on the same podcast because you'll just stop listening. I've already stopped. I would rather spend more time talking about Davie Cooper, quite frankly. But I want to get this done over with. It's supposed to be a Dundee pod. I'll split it up into little segments afterwards. That's what we'll do. It's a Dundee preview pod, but we'll have to talk about what happened with the old the banner. Rangers suspended a sentence. Just like Joey Barton. Joey Barton kicking his wife in the head. That guy should never been anywhere near a club. I knew it at the time, and it's he just continues to prove me right. And if I'm proven right, things are really bad. The suspended sentence on the closure of the Copland Road stand. That's the sentence handed down to us by UEFA, who also gave us various fines, which I think all totaled to the amount of thousands of pounds that equate with what the actual capacity of Ibrox will be if we do. It's around about 40,000 grand, 40,000 pounds, around about 40 grand. I think probably the capacity will be just over 41 or 42,000 if we have to shut the Copland. It's a suspended sentence on the closing of the Copland, and there's all sorts of angles to this. I saw somebody put a comment up on Twitter. I'm still on Twitter. I retain my Twitter account, but because Elon Musk is just vermin, I don't want to go anywhere near it. I don't want to use it, whatever. But there's people that I communicate with. That's the only way I communicate with them is through Twitter. So I keep the account. It's hoping to be able to get in touch with me for certain things if I didn't have my Twitter account. But I saw somebody put up something. I'll only post something if it's critical of Trump, Musk, or kind of right wing crap. But somebody put up something about saying that the whole of the Rangers support agrees with that banner. Agrees with the keep woke agendas. I dealt with this last week. In the pot, just saying how people claiming that the banner doesn't even make any sense. So how can we be fined for it? How can there be a problem with it? Why put the banner up then? Why have the banner up at all? They're trying to say something. It's obviously anti the woke ideology, and there's no such thing as a woke ideology. Woke's a pejorative term. It's a pejorative use of a term that's we should be woke. We should be. Anyway, I dealt with that crap last week. My feelings about the actual banner itself, and that's been the main takeaway for me. Is just the fear that kind of garbage is taken over. This dominant group kind of victimhood type of thing. For me, so there's a moment in the Windsors. Do you know that comedy, The Windsors? That was the woman who was playing Camilla. She's passed away now, unfortunately. But Harry Enfield and all that, and the guy who plays William, Prince William, when he goes and he opens he says, I was unveiling he's got a cure for broken Britain. I know how to, it's on the post-Brexit. He says, I know we're going to have to bring everybody, the two sides together. And he says, I did it today. I unveiled a statue. I unveiled a statue of a white van driver rolling the window down and giving the wanker sign to a 42-year-old man in a beanie hat on a skateboard reading a comic. I thought, that's spot on. That was the first thing I'd heard since Brexit, which kind of united the two extremes of it's an online thing. It's all been pushed by Russian bots, part of anything else. But everybody just trying to be polarising people, making people hate each other while the completely truly venal people in our society are in there taking our money off us. I don't worry about how big your electricity bills are. Don't worry that it used to be 3 bottles of wine for a tenner. No, that was the SNP. Don't worry that it used to be 33 pence for Morrison's own brand soup and now it's 72 pence. It's just, but there's a trans guy that isn't properly trans. He's just a pervert that's trying to get. It's happened like twice. It's awful. But somebody put a post up on Twitter saying that the whole Rangers support agreed with that banner, and it was an absolute shame that the club had come out and condemned it. And the response to that, and this is what I've seen everywhere. It was just, I felt the need to go in and go, Davie, fuck, I don't agree with it. And you worry that, am I alone? You get that? Is it just me that thinks like this? Does everybody else really agree with it? No, we don't. The response to that, guys, I actually end up feeling sorry for the fella that posted this, because it's such an overwhelming. Is it based? They call it. You've been based. Everybody just responding, going, "No, we don't. I don't know MD who agrees with that. I don't know MD who agrees with that." And I know we've got a few people around the peripheries of the club. A few people that love Rangers through and through, and have put more money into the club than I have, who do agree with that banner. But yet, the minute we get charged by UEFA, the minute the club themselves condemn it, they suddenly pretend they don't understand what the banner means, because that would mean that there's no reason to they punish us for it. It doesn't make any sense. You got to own it. If you're going to stick up for it, you got to stick up for it properly. But it's like we get fined for people being on the stairs. We get fined for the gangways, an access thing. We get fined for our players. So many of our players getting booked, that's something else against a Jose Mourinho side. We get fined for the flares of pyrotechnics, and we get the biggest fine. It was 25 grand for the kind of political aspects of that banner, or the bigoted aspect of that banner. It's a horrendous thing, and so many Rangers fans are angry with it. And even the anger then, sometimes that in itself, I want to kind of rein back a bit and just say, hang on. As I was saying last week, I think we need to get around these young guys who've put this banner up and just find out why they do it, why they think. I remember I got arrested when I was like 18 for twisting somebody's car aerial and hitting their living room window with a brush that was kicking about outside, because I was so pissed I didn't know what I was doing. And all my pals at that age were getting arrested and getting admonished and getting a wee kind of warning or whatever for the police for doing stupid things round about drink. Some of us didn't have dads, some of us, my dad was estranged from their mother and father in the middle of a divorce, or dad was a drinker. All my dads were drinkers, I think. It was a real problem, and I just, at that time, going to see Rangers, going to watch sticking by Rangers was the staunch thing. That was the kind of the bit in your life that kept you could give love that would be reciprocated. But it wasn't when we get beat. And I just know that none of my problems at that point in time were about immigrants or anything like that. And the National Front now were kicking about in the days as well. They were leafleting outside Ibrox and stuff like that. But that was never felt like being the solution. It never really has been, because it's not the actual problem. It was something, and these boys, whatever their problems are in their life right now, it is not trans people or gay folk or people having their civil. This idea of when are we going to get white? One of the replies I saw on Twitter was, when are we going to get White Protestant Day at Ibrox? Every day is White Protestant Day at Ibrox. It's the most kind of white Protestant space in Scotland outside the General Synod of the Synod of the General Assembly Church of Scotland. It's a ridiculous notion. You're trying to offer friendship. You're trying to offer defence to minority groups, and I know within each minority group, this is why I hate this thing, because you go off trying to anticipate all the arguments. But I know within various minority groups, look, there is Muslim fundamentalists and what have you, and but sometimes you think, no fucking wonder the way folk are treated in this country. It would make you so scared that you'd end up doing something stupid, and the next time there's an atrocity or something like that, there will be more jihadist atrocities. Nobody will say this is the fault of everybody telling Muslim people that they should go home and that they're into Sharia law and all that. Even if it's people whose views you disagree with, you're not going to get anywhere by estranging them. You've got to bring them into the vote. I mean, we've got, anyway, never mind. What I'm trying to say is, Tav's monotone. He's a loser. Every time we get beat off Celtic, Tav's monotone. I hate it. So we'll see when it's post-match reaction at Parkhead. It's the same. His monotone is exactly the same, But yet when he was speaking, when he actually handed over the man of the match award to Nico Raskin, he was like, "Oh, a goal and an assist! Whoa!" He just became himself again because he's been a Rangers man. He's just a shy bloke, or he's no outgoing in that kind of way. But when he knows everybody, when he's in amongst his own crowd, that's the thing with folk. People, you got to get to know them, and basically, we're all the same. I hate his monotone. Every time we get beat, us, Mr. Excuses, Mr. Next Time, Mr. We Go Again. Well, he sounds exactly the same when we beat Celtic twice in a row, and we beat them for the first time in 4.5 years at Parkhead. It's just the way he talks to the media. You don't really get to know people properly unless you get to know them properly. Nico Raskin, by the way, he's gone. I told you that after the Spurs game. I did see Spurs game. So he's man of the match against Ukraine. But a great comeback. He has his debut against Ukraine, comes on as a substitute in the first game. I think they get beat 3-1, did they, Belgium, in a Nations League relegation promotion playoff. And then when they beat them 3-0 in the home game, Nico Raskin plays for the start and he goes off he's man of the match, and he goes off to a standing ovation. He's no coming back. I thought Spurs would buy him after the way he played against them at Ibrox in the Europa League group stage this season, but maybe it's going to be somebody else now. Just don't ask him about a contract extension because you will not like the answer. But he's at the heart of the style, which the style we've been playing this season, especially under Philippe Clement, which I heard summarised brilliantly during the week on the Blank Check podcast with Griffin and David, all about Mulholland Drive. And it was the Leslie Headland. Leslie Headlands, she is a Broadway playwright and film director, absolutely insanely in love with Mulholland Drive, the movie, David Lynch movie, like myself. And she was talking about the scene, the amazing scene, they're all amazing scenes, but where Betty, the character of Betty, played by Naomi Watts, who we later know she's Diane Selwyn, really. She goes for an audition. And she is sensational in this audition, absolutely mind-blowing. It's a phenomenal scene. And it's because there's a creepy, one of the old actors she's got to work with, she's a young actress, and it's this creepy old guy who's using the excuse of the scene that they're in when they're doing it in front of a packed room. He's pulling her in close and kind of groping on that and making it very sexual, so she gets even more sexual, and what this Leslie Headland described as a strange blend of acquiescence and agency. And I thought that's Rangers. That's how Rangers have been playing this when we're at our best. It's a strange blend of acquiescence and agency. You have the ball, but my God, we're going to win the game. You're going to have most possession. We acquiesce to the fact you're going to have most possession, but our agency is going to blow you away, and it's turning it around. That's the problem we got with the game against Dundee. I'm deliberately trying to avoid having to talk about this, the banner thing, the suspended sentence. UEFA. I'll go back to the point I was making about UEFA. I get it. I get what UEFA are all about. But at least they are actually against racism and homophobia. At least they are actually against the Russians, the banned Russia from European club competition, international competition, and at least they're paying lip service to the LGBTQ plus rights, which you certainly wouldn't get in Russia. And a lot of our supporters, I'd be scared to fly a Ukraine flag now in support of Ukraine at Ibrox, because a few of our fans, I think we're getting to the stage where we're swallowing this crap from Musk, from Farage, from all these people. The Ukrainians are woke. They certainly are not, because they're fighting a war against a much larger foe. And there's a bunch of Nazis involved with Ukraine as well, but we need them in our side right now. Mo Diamandi, he played for Cote d'Ivoire, didn't he? He played for Cote d'Ivoire. I can't remember who against this week. With Václav Cherny, he scored for Czech Republic against Gibraltar. Didn't want to come off. We had, who else did we have? We had Raskin playing for Belgium. We had Hamza Igaman, did he come on as a sub against Niger? And he didn't get off the bench against Tanzania. With Tom Lawrence, he played nothing. He was twice away with Wales, just stayed on the bench both times. But Rabbi Matondo, he's not even at Rangers. He's loaned him out just to be annoying. He came off the bench twice for Wales in this pile of international fixtures, and he scored in one of the games against Kazakhstan, I think. It's just to annoy us. He starts scoring. He's playing at Hanover.
and he scored. John Souttar and Liam Kelly went away with Scotland, away over to Greece, and Big John Souttar just thinking, what is the big deal with Piraeus? I've been over here with Rangers and we won, and then I'm over here with Scotland. We drew with Rangers, John Souttar, and he's over there with Scotland, and they win 1-0. Well, it was a different thing altogether. Have I mentioned this before? That was my 94th Scotland game I was going to on Sunday there for the second leg of that promotion relegation playoff, and it was the 94th time I've seen the Scotland men's national team, full team, and the last time I saw the Greek national team was in 1994, beat them 1-0, and the day before was William Shatner's 94th birthday. I've had almost 2 weeks without Rangers, folks. Going back to Hampden in the midst of that, it was quite weird. Queen's Park, that's Hampden's been, they've moved out of Hampden. They're supposed to be at Lesser Hampden, or the City Ground, I think the sponsorship reasons it's called. But they've moved back into Hampden. So basically, they're tenants of Hampden this season. We're tenants of Hampden. Queen's Park come to Ibrox and they put us out the Scottish Cup at home. And yet we're basically ground sharing. We've been ground sharing with Queen's Park at Hampden this season. I realised that I touched the ball, I kicked the ball at Shieldfield Park, Berwick. The only time I've been there, it was for Berwick Rangers against Queen's Park in the 3rd Division. And this is in the year 1999. And I deliberately kicked the ball back. And the wee kind of ducat they've got at Shieldfield Park, Berwick, we covered enclosure opposite the main stand, and obviously the terrace extends well beyond the roof. It was a beautiful warm day, a sunny day anyway. And my mate and I, we just stood at the kind of end of the terrace, and it was well outside the roof, and the ball comes off, and I caught the ball. And the Queen's Park player comes up to take the throw in, and instead of just throwing it into his hands, because he's wearing the beautiful Queen's Park. I saw it close up this season. It's getting a bit modern, but the beautiful thin black hoops, the total Victorian look, the Scottish football, the guys who invented Scottish football, basically. So I drop kicked it. I let the ball fall down onto my foot, and I just drop kicked it into his hand, just a wee dink. And the guy catches the ball and he goes on and he plays it, because I felt as if I wanted to kick the ball to a Queen's Park player. I'm kicking the ball to the Queen's Park first team player, the team that invented the Scotland national team. It was the first Scotland national team. It was all Queen's Park players, and I didn't invent the Scotland national team, but they populated it. And it meant the world to me. That was a silly wee thing that I did that day. What I didn't realise, my mate and I then went to Queen's Park, played Berwick Rangers, of course, at Hampden that season in the return game in the league. I was there in March, so that's 25th of March 2000. That's the programme there. I saw Queen's Park against Berwick Rangers in the league at Hampden, but earlier that season, on the 8th of January, I'd seen Queen's Park against Berwick Rangers at Hampden in the Scottish Cup. I don't know why we went twice. I think we enjoyed the banter because the Berwick Rangers fans were flying England flags towards the Queen's Park fans in the way out of that game at Shieldfield. Rangers had been there a few times in the Scottish Cup since '67. And maybe in the League Cup as well, and it never really, I never bothered to go down, but this was the time I was going through all the grounds that I would never get to following Rangers, and of course Rangers ended up playing Berwick Rangers and Queen's Park in the 3rd Division. But I didn't realise at that time I went to see them home and away against each other, and then in the Scottish Cup I was basically uniting the two worst Scottish Cup defeats in Rangers history. At home to Queen's Park, away to Berwick Rangers. So I apologise. I've only just realised this the past and it's really weirded me out. My mate and I also went to see Queen's Park against Brecon City at Hampden that season, and of course Brecon were the first team that Rangers played as a lower league club, and I was at that game, the hedge and all that. I don't know, something really weird happened that season. I feel as if everything was my fault. I'm still not doing it. I'm still not talking about the banner. We won a European trophy. We get banned for defending it. Our next European final, there was a mass riot in Manchester. By the time we're in Seville, our fans are at risk of just basically dying of thirst because they're so poorly treated in the stadium. I'm not saying that's all to do with our behaviour, because particularly at Barcelona in '72, we were fighting the Guardia Civil. They were Franco's henchman, that just took a wee bit of twisting. That took a wee bit of twisting, a bit of spin, bit of media spin, just to be seen as an actual heroic action. But that's never going to be allowed to be so, because we're Rangers and we are the dominant force societally as well. So we've got to take it on the chin. That's just part of the deal. But yeah, I don't. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want to, stick up for this flag, just for almost for the sake of it? I'm not seeing this amount of anger around a banner since Dr. David Banner turned into the Incredible Hulk, and he was green. We don't like green. It's almost like it's about, we want Rangers to be more than just being the team that plays in blue and hates a team playing in green. We want it to be something deeper than that. So is that? I talked about 1995 Champions League final. I know UEFA are frauds. I know they're at it. I know UEFA are bent. I know UEFA kowtow not to the big clubs so much as the big populations. It's I'm saying Blackburn Rovers get more rights in 1994-95 than Ajax did, because despite Ajax's storied European history, because Blackburn Rovers came from a bigger demographic. There was worth more money to UEFA. They came from the English population. They use clubs. They make an example of clubs of our size, of clubs in our situation where we're big enough to get the publicity, but we're small enough in terms of the pond that we come from, Scotland, to not really affect UEFA in any way, not to be a threat to the ongoing war with the European Super League and threatening to break away. It's just like HMRC. It's like HMRC in 2011 and 2012, using us an example of shutting down EBTs, getting really hard on tax evasion to avoid having to do the same to Starbucks or to Google or Manchester United. I don't know if they use the EBTs, but they're £1 billion in debt, and you're getting government help to build a new 100,000 capacity stadium. It's quite incredible. We're just big enough to get ourselves into trouble, basically, but until they find some way to break down the borders. And another, just like taking it a bit further, what happened in 1995 with the deregulation of advertising and TV coverage, and that allowed both Ajax and Milan to wear advertising on their kit. If we just go a bit further with that to get to the point where Rangers are just seen for the club that they are, the size there, it's no being part of Scotland, it's maybe even just being part of Britain, part of Europe, whatever. Hopefully things will continue to deregulate football wise. The English were banned for half a decade though. We're banned for Europe for half a decade. That was a ban which ended the season before they ran the Champions League pro forma to 91-92, the dummy run for the Champions League in the European Cup. They had the group stage, but it wasn't actually the Champions League as such. They didn't have they'd only got the sponsors on board until they'd had it tested out. And this is the Champions League that we helped create. We helped create the Champions League. David Murray through Campbell Ogilvie was in there making sure Rangers, who were consistently winning the league title at that point in time, were going to be right in the Champions League, because we want to be dining at the top table, dining at the big table. That's what it's all about, wasn't it? That's what we wanted. And the top table is thick with pretension and hypocrisy, and that doesn't mean manners. Doesn't mean they're going to pick you up on your manners. It's about etiquette, which is very different. It's a far more oppressive thing. People with horrific manners are usually right into etiquette in a way of using that against you. This is the way things are done, and we're the nouveau riche, Rangers nouveau riche now. We're old money. We're so old. Scotland's the third oldest league in the world. The Scottish Cup's the oldest extant football trophy in the world. The first international was played in Scotland. Rangers, on the go since 1872. We are proper old money, so old that we're actually poor. These folk that have big country mansions and all that they inherited, but they don't have any kind of cash flow at all. So UEFA's top table is bona fide riche, and they're terrified of scholarship geniuses from the sticks. They'll try and get us on the etiquette. They'll try and pick us up on the fact that we shouldn't really be at this table. It's up to you if you let them. It's up to you. There's a compelling but kind of disingenuous argument had in situations like this, that being coarse, that being rude, that putting up these banners condemning the wokes and what have you is more honest. No, it's not necessarily. Honest is just honest, but like if you've laughed during prayers at a funeral, or you've, I don't know, sang frigging in the rigging during somebody's wedding, maybe that was your wedding vows, but if you've started shouting and swearing while somebody's at a wedding or something like that, or you've you run about buck naked at a toddler's birthday party or something with your neighbours and that there. Now, if you really don't care, if you just want, if you think that's more honest, if you think you're just giving it to the man by doing stuff like that, you really are, totally against manners to that point, against etiquette, then you think that makes you real or genuine. Nah, you're certainly not being politically active. You're just being a bit of a dick who can't read the room, or an overgrown Wayne who doesn't want anybody else to be happy either. I kind of think it ended more depressing than going into a European group or a knockout stage, and the excitement of big name opponents and the big time opportunities for Rangers being kind of cancelled out, honestly, by a kind of counter expectation of almost deliberately pissing off UEFA to get the stadium closed, or even to get our team banned from Europe. It's like the broken glass of Manchester. I remember coming to the City of Manchester Stadium and meeting my gay cousin, first, and we're walking back in, him and his sister were walking back into the town centre, and the sirens were going, and we're going away from the stadium. How football's changed. They're going into the city centre, and we're like, we knew it was going to be happening. And then as we started getting in towards the city centre, the police stopped us and said, I wouldn't go in there, there's riots. Of course there is. We just applauded Zenit St Petersburg in the park. We just applauded our own team. And then this will be the headlines now. And we get into the city centre, and it just started crunching. There was no signs of it. I did see the guy on this, the guy with the stick, one leg in plaster, hopping through the window of Boots the Chemist, because it was getting ransacked. I remember seeing that, but there really wasn't a lot of violence going on by the time we get back into the city centre in Manchester, but the place was absolutely trashed. And that was it. That was our reputation fixed again. I mean, Liverpool are the model of clearing out real fans. Liverpool, perpetrated the worst incident of violence ever seen in a European final. Talking about high-profile European games. And that came from the fact that the season, the year before, they'd been in the European Cup final in Rome, playing Roma in the Olympic Stadium in Rome, and they beat them in penalties, and their fans were savagely attacked after that game. Lazio hooligans were giving chibs and all that to the Liverpool fans after that game to try and help them out. But Liverpool go back to the European Cup final the following season, and revenge is in the air. I know it's Juventus, but they're just thinking, it's Italians, let's get them. They didn't know the state of the stadium, the state of the Heysel Stadium, and there's a lot of people to blame, but I don't know. It's just this is kind of stuff that's going to, if you want to be at the top table, you're going to have to kind of sort yourself out, because when the English clubs got the ban for 5 years, and then Manchester United won the Cup Winners' Cup, Man United and Aston Villa didn't get back in 1991 season. The ban came in 1985. Like Norwich City were a fantastic club. Fantastically harmless club in Norwich City, and they'd qualified for Europe, and they didn't get to, they did get to play in Europe eventually, obviously Norwich City, but was it Everton as well? They'd spent years and years watching Liverpool win the European Cup, and then they had this amazing team. They'd won the league for the first time since 1970 and 1985, and they'd won the Cup Winners' Cup that season as well. So they were well equipped to go on, and everybody thought they were going to have a right go at winning the European Cup themselves for the first. And it's one of the sickest ironies of all time that's violence involving Liverpool fans. It stops Everton getting into Europe for the next 5 years. Sort of at the end of that season, the greatest team in the modern age, no able to go and play in Europe, and you never know what could have happened there. It could have changed Everton as a club completely. But it's just one of the things. I don't want us to get to the point where we see it as some sort of activism just to piss off UEFA, just because there's a lot of talk. What I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of talk. People saying, the club should be sticking by the supporters, no condemning the supporters. They should be, it just sounds like we're going to do it again. We see this as some sort of political act. It isn't political activism. It's just dickish. I similarly can think of nothing more depressing than Rangers becoming a corporate lounge in extremis. The stands being rammed. We kind of well behaved and really fluent English speaking Scandinavians who know the lyrics of one song, disinterested golfers and rugby fans on their day off, kind of getting real for a few hours. I go to enough Scotland games for that kind of bants with the lads type atmosphere. I don't want Rangers becoming like that either. I think it's starting to be seen as it's an either or scenario here. It isn't. It really isn't. It's just this flag, this banner. It's nothing to do with anything. It's just nothing to do with anything real. It's stupid, and I think the lifetime bans is far too harsh. I think that's far too harsh a punishment. Rangers should be setting up some sort of kind of education for these boys, make them come in and give them a bloody lecture, get them told that your Elon Musks and Donald Trumps and anybody who promotes anti-woke or woke as an agenda. That's it. I stay in the West End. I went to university. I know better than anybody that there's people who have got a woke position, but I've got a totally Nazi disposition. I know there's a concern out there for people it would just be political correctness when I was a young man. It's political correctness gone mad. This thing that they're going to ban Christmas and all our Waynes are getting sex changes at school and stuff like that, and it's just scaremongering. Hysterical scaremongering that is meant to distract you from the fact these people are taking our fucking money off us. They're the real oppressors. You should watch, and why would you watch? If you don't like this stuff, you're never going to listen to me anyway. There's nothing worse than somebody saying you need to watch this. But John Harris and John Demokos, it's a Guardian. It is a Guardian thing. It's been going since about 2009 or something like that. Well over 10 years anyway. It's outstanding YouTube video series, and they're all about 20 minutes long, roughly on average. These videos, it's got anywhere but Westminster. Anywhere but Westminster. John Harris, who's a really annoying music journalist, annoying because he was so clever when I was a young man, and it's just turned into one of my all-time heroes for this. It's probably the most important piece of political journalism in, I say, 21st century Britain. Absolutely, at least. It's a phenomenal thing. You should watch this because he doesn't. A key one that really swung it for me this series, and it makes me quite emotional watching it, and thinking about it, is when he goes to the Labour Party conference, and I can't even. It was in Scarborough. It's one of the Labour Party conferences, and somebody who's obviously been watching his videos. It's like a momentum campaign. I know, a hardcore far left zealot basically is outside the Labour Party conference rallying for something, and he sees John Harris, and he just says to him, he's still talking to Nazis. He's still going about the country talking to Nazis, and he's like, shut the fuck up. Shut up, because he's not talking, he's talking to people. He's talking to people and finding out why they've voted for Brexit, why they've voted to cut off their nose, to spite their face, why has this happened? And it's just, it's a way of, I realised, a few years ago, I've got left-wing friends now who I have to tell me to shut the fuck up. The way they will talk about people, they're enjoying the fact that there's people they see as their intellectual inferiors and all that. You shouldn't be enjoying this. If you're truly socialist, if you're truly concerned, then this is, that Rangers supporters, all Rangers supporters are friends of mine. They're all friends. And to have Rangers supporters believing in something that I feel is so damaging to them and me, on a social level, never mind what it does for Rangers, it's heartbreaking. And to know that if they say anything against it, you kind of play into the woke agenda stereotype, a false stereotype. It's really difficult. It's a real heartbreak, and it's a massive issue in the 21st century in Britain at this time. It's so boring. It's so difficult to describe everything I want to talk about. I would watch that, and it gets to the nub of the matter. Just because there's people running about going, you can't say stuff about black folk, you can't say stuff about Asian folk. It's because they're trying to protect you as well. You know, and I know there are bad actors within that. I know there are, but you can't let the few bad apples. I'll try and sort that out from my side. You try and sort out the fucking the people going over to Nigel Farage and all that. I'm not thinking Nigel Farage is harsh enough. It's awful. But I say I took a lot of hope from the response to a few of the emails that were sticking up for the banner in Rangers Twitter this week. It was good. I think most fans seem to be really angry at the Union Bears. Somebody, I forget who it was, sorry, describing the post under last week's pod saying it was like the tail wagging the dog, you know, because you get this small group of fans who are basically causing havoc for the club and could end up getting the club banned from Europe or having to play in front of a half-empty stadium. That's the Union Bears do provide so much atmosphere. They're part of the reason that we're winning these European ties. They're a massive part of that reason because of the atmosphere they help create. And it sums things up at Rangers at the fucking moment. The Rangers end has never been so powerful, you know, for years as it was that night when the penalties were getting taken there against Fenerbahce. But it's also that end that's going to end up getting itself shut and going to ruin it for us in Europe. But people are angry at the Union Bears for that. But I think most people just aren't interested in the banner. They don't really think about it one way or the other. I'm concerned that people actually believe in that shit, that there is foreign woke agendas and this kind of nonsense. I've completely lost the thread, if there ever was one. 1 hour 35 minutes. Sorry, folks. I get a bit stuttery and stammery because I just feel it's such a long podcast, and I know it's going to be going out of sync now as well because it's going on so long. I need to do more pods. I don't want to bore yous, but I should do more pods of shorter length rather than piling everything into this one big pod, particularly when it comes to such a horrible, divisive discussion as this one about this banner, about the woke agendas, the woke ideologies. I know you're supposed to say you missed Rangers. This is why I don't miss Rangers. But if you don't miss Rangers, if you are like, I can't wait for the football to be back, I can't wait for Rangers to be back, you're not paying attention. You don't care enough because it's draining. If you properly care for Rangers, particularly this last few seasons, it's bloody draining, and it's great to get a weekend away from us, and it's nice to go. It's Scotland. I do care deeply about Scotland. I'm really proud of Scotland, the way they've been in the Nations League. That's the first time we've been relegated, and it was, you know, we didn't even finish bottom of our group. Group A, got to the top league. So Group 1 in League A. We got to the top league in the Nations League. Took us 4 seasons. Alec McLeish was involved in that, as well as Steve Clarke, and that's been the fuel that's powered us going into these qualifying for these major tournaments. And UEFA didn't do anything about Boris Johnson when the Euros, the semi-finals and the final were getting staged at Wembley, and Boris Johnson is telling the country, he's our Prime Minister, saying that he thinks, you know, taking the knee is an act of surrender. It's one of the most disgusting things ever said by a leader of a free country, characterising an act of sublimation, an act of just pleading that is saying this is the most polite way I can possibly think to protest what is happening to my people. It's like all lives matter. See, when you start throwing truisms at Black Lives Matter, we start throwing truisms in there, it's just distracting, it's disingenuous, it's obfuscation. You're completely missing the point. Because all lives matter, everybody seems to know that, but they don't, because black lives don't seem to matter. That's why they're having to say that. White lives totally, they seem to matter more than anybody else's. UEFA didn't do anything about Boris Johnson, telling the black players, England black players, that they shouldn't be taking the knee. Gareth Southgate, the manager, had to come up and has become a leader of men. And what happened to the young fellas, the young guys that missed the penalties against Italy in the final of Euro 2020, which was played in 2021, it's absolutely horrendous. The abuse they took, just for the colour of their skin, because they'd missed these penalties. It was absolutely horrific. And UEFA took no action against a man that had actively encouraged. I don't know. It does seem wrong that Rangers are getting punished so heavily for one tiny wee banner. The club are coming down heavy on it, obviously in a political way to make sure it doesn't happen again. But it shouldn't be lifetime bans. You're in danger of getting people on side with the supporters who've made this banner, rather than rising up against the very tone, the message, the content of that banner. I think sometimes I wish I get more breaks, but it does make you think, what would happen if Rangers actually disappeared altogether? I know a lot of people in 2012 were telling us that Rangers had disappeared altogether. Do you think you'd enjoy the change in your life? What if Rangers did disappear altogether? How long do you think you'd be able to cope with it? It'd be that big. Would it be that big a change in your life? Maybe a lot of folk just support Rangers. They love listening to the banter about it. It's just something they're vaguely interested in. And then if Rangers disappeared, they would notice no difference. I reckon I would enjoy 1 full year. 1 full year, I find it quite interesting. To be, especially the summer, that's fine. Every second summer you don't have any football. But I reckon by a complete, first, I've got springtime and no football. That's quite interesting. I've got winter time and no football. That's quite interesting. I feel a bit free in many ways, because Rangers definitely hold my emotions captive. But I think after a full year, I would start. I'd probably lose some weight as well, and I'd basically go berserk. But would you abandon football altogether? Would it be too painful? Would you support another team? In Scotland, another top flight team? Could you support it? Nah, you couldn't shift your emotions to anybody else. Or would you start non-league juniors? The juniors. There's a pyramid system now, so basically the team that you start falling in love with could end up playing, in the top flights. Basically, if you get an interest in a big English club, you just start following them from afar. You get more interested in that. Or would you get into rugby, movies? Go to movies more? Go to the cinema? Would you do more drinking? Or drink more heavily? Would you? I don't know. 48 years. It's nearly going to be 48 years. The Hibs game at home will be officially 48 years since I started supporting Rangers properly. Anything else I do now would really be a waste of a half a century of investment, basically. So, but it's been horrible. This whole banner thing has been absolutely horrible, and I've been desperately trying to find other things to talk about instead of it. But there it is, we've been fined. We're playing Dundee. Barry's press conference. I'm going to do Barry's press conference. I'm going to read it. Barry had his pre-match press conference today. So if I was just to basically relay to you what he said, there's not really a lot of point in that, is there? Because I just give you the link to the official Rangers YouTube channel, and you can go and see for yourself what he was saying. But so I'll do it in a kind of Simon Jordan telling it like it is style. Harsh truths, that's what we need. So Barry, he said that the players, he started off his press conference today, ahead of the Dundee game, by saying the players got a week off, but today is the first day with all the international players back. Not all of them trained, and one or two of them have got slight injury problems. So it wasn't a week off then? No, a week off. What do you mean? No, Barry, you're saying that you gave the players a week off after the Celtic game, but international duty, I think they were playing on Thursday and Friday last week, so that's not a chance to get a full. And they're just coming back today. I don't think they really have had a week off, have they? Telling us lies. It's a cover-up. Thanks, Simon. So he did a bit of work with the players who weren't on international duty. I guess that's it. Tav and Butland know exactly what's happening. James Tavernier and Jack Butland, they're going to know exactly what's happening, and then the rest of the players who just come back for international duty, they're going to have to catch up. That's a great way to run your team. Barry acknowledged our problems away from home this season, and he relishes the challenge of trying to sort that out. We've had a lot of problems on the road this season. Barry was relishing the fact that these are the kind of games we've got to win. But what about the home problems, Barry? We've just lost 4 straight games at home for the first time in our history. I think that's a bit more of a pressing problem. Wake up. Nice moment of steel, followed by a wee cheeky laugh when somebody said to him about, you said you were, one of the journalists said you're talking about making the players a bit more nasty, and we've been too nice this season. And he was like, oh, well, I think you've seen that. That's actually worked, and he's going to get a bit of a stare. But then he just a wee laugh about it afterwards. So it's quite a nice moment. Don't laugh, Barry. Don't laugh. Simon Jordan says, don't laugh. It spoils it. You've got to be hard. Don't let them off the hook. Don't be so woke. Praising players. Barry was praising players for taking on board the ideas of his new management team in such a short space of time. Tomorrow, Friday, might be only the second proper day of training he's had with the full squad. So what, is that my fault? Is that my fault, Barry? You trying to blame me for that? He's praising Nico Raskin, for doing so well with Belgium during the week, but his emphasis and tone was on kind of driving Raskin on, seeing his international debut as a start to what he could possibly achieve, and no more than that. He's obviously trying to keep Nico Raskin grounded. That's great, Barry. Well done. You're going to piss off somebody that we're trying to negotiate with to stay with the club in the summer, and he knows you don't appreciate him. Nice one, says Simon Jordan. He wasn't condemning the fans for the banner. He just diplomatically kind of saying how great the fans have been to him since he took over as interim manager, and how important a full Ibrox is to the team. Speak up, Barry. Speak up. Have the balls to say that you hate the woke. Or do you want our Wednesday have sex changes at school? Do you know why they have the... is it penguins? It's usually identifying as penguins, identifying as cats. That's the two favourites. Identifying as Ken. Do you know why they have the cat litters in the schools? No cat litters. It's buckets they've got with sand, or maybe cat litter in the bottom. It's American schools, because they have to... There's so many school shootings that they have to prepare for a shooter being in the school, and if they're locked in the classroom, and the Waynes will not be able to go to the toilets, which are in the corridor, as they always are at schools, for hours on end, and they'll have to fucking use the toilet, they'll have to use a bucket in the class. That's why they've got that in there, and that gets because the NRA, because the pro-gun stuff, that. Just turning that into the... But aye, go on, Barry, come on, just the woke agenda there. It was beyond diplomatic way. Cherny's celebrations at Parkhead, he defended Cherny with the squishing the water in the face of Celtic fans at Parkhead. He wondered if he'd be more worried if his players weren't excited or overexcited, as he seemed to say, and he would leave investigations and punishments into what had happened in the technical area at Parkhead, the away bench, to others. He was kind of pointing off to stage left, as if to say directors, administrators, whatever. When we score, we celebrate. That was Barry's words. When we score, we celebrate. And if we win, we're going to win the game. I want my players to go in and celebrate with the fans who've paid a lot of money to be there. Tell them you're happy the Pope's dying, Barry. Just tell them grow up here. Sing the Billy Boys in the presser, Barry. Sing the Billy... If you're trying to make it you're one of us that you like the fans, be one of the fans. Sing the Billy Boys. Get his band, Barry. You're scared of the wokes. You're going to say you're one of us now. Well, get yourself... Charles and Camilla, they cancelled their trip. To go and see the Pope, because the Pope's not very well. And the Pope knows that Charles's mother saw off umpteen popes. And he knows Charles will go over there and finish off the job. That's what the Windsors did. Get it mentioned, Barry. Stick up for the people. He wants Rangers to keep Cherny, obviously, but are we even keeping Barry? So this segued into, he mentioned something about in the summertime, you have to make sure we try and keep Cherny, because he's a fantastic player. He's a difference maker, Barry says, a player he calls a difference maker, Václav Cherny, and that segued into, for the journalists, asking, well, are you going to be here in the summer, Barry? What's your plans? And he's like, oh, no. You're not going to I'm not thinking any further on the end of the season in terms of my job, and I'm not thinking any further in terms of Saturday in Dundee at Dens Park. Isn't it? Kerridine Sedan tried to make him apply his kind of unconscious bit of wordplay. Barry been talking about the high standards he was getting out of the players. The players need to have high standards if they're going to play for Rangers, high performance standards. And I don't think Kerridine actually meant it, but he was saying how these high standards does that apply to the supporters as well, because of these banners, let's raise the standards high. I don't think he was actually meaning that, but Barry had said something about, I hope the fans behave themselves. Just obviously hanging us out to dry, woke agenda. Butland had grassed him up. Somebody grassed up Jack Butland, having said that. Jack Butland had said that Barry gave him the hairdryer treatment in the dressing room when it needed to be. So that was something that has to remain private. I bet what goes on in the dressing room has to remain private, Barry, because you've got all the black players and all the Muslim players in there. I bet you can't say anything, but what you say, you probably say something that wasn't woke, and that's you're going to get a forced sex change. They're going to transit. So pick a target. The dressing room remains private, but there's more than just being a good team. It's more about just being a good team, having an innate quality. You've got to have a whole lot of stuff about driving standards. That was Barry's press conference today. It was very nice. We're getting Dundee away. We've conceded exactly two goals in our last 4 league games, and 5 of our last 6 games of of any type, considering, Fenerbahce beat us 2-0 at Ibrox the last time we were at home. We've lost 4 in a row at Ibrox for the first time in our history, and we haven't kept a clean sheet since about 1894. It's been a great couple of weeks, but we're far from sorted. This is the very kind of fixture, if not the very fixture, which has been our nemesis for almost a year now. This is since Clermont stopped winning the league, which was this time last year. So we need to really beware going here on Saturday at 5:30. Really horrible, awkward time. Second bottom, Dundee, second bottom in the league, and in the relegation playoff spot. They're 5 points ahead of St Johnstone, just one behind Kilmarnock. 5 points ahead of St Johnstone, who are at the bottom, but just one behind Kilmarnock, who are third from bottom. But the same day we were beating Celtic at Parkhead for the first time in 4.5 years, Dundee were having a sensational win. I just watched the highlights over Dundee United at Tannadice, their first win in the first away win in the Dundee derby for 21 years. They had the ball in the net 5 times. They beat them 4-2. They had the ball in the net 5 times in the first half. Lyle Cameron, soon to be of Rangers, pre-contracted. He's had the ball in the net after about 10 minutes, but that got disallowed for an earlier offside. But so they're in a terrible position in the league, but they're playing really well. Dundee, we put them out in the League Cup this season. We beat them at Ibrox in the League Cup. The first game back with the Copland Road stand open, but of course they've already had that 1-8 strawberries in January at Dens Park. Just to repeat, the 0-0 they had was towards the end of last season, or the latter part of last season. We beat Dundee 5-0 at Dens in the early part of it was October, November last season, in the earlier part of Clermont's reign. Pounded them 5-0, but that was it. It's been, and before that as well, since we come back into the top flight, it's been a bit of a tricky the venue for us at Dens Park. But my advice, we still don't know what formation we're going to be playing, really, because we're still getting used to Barry's team, and he said he's been trying out different things, with a bit more time with the team on the training pitch, so maybe he's trying different tactics. Are we going to try and do the kind of lateral thing, which is very Clermont-like, that we did at Rugby Park? We lost 2 goals to start with Rugby Park. The goals we scored were quite direct. Surely we're not going to be hitting Dundee on the break. Is he going to go with 3 centre-halves again? That works at Ibrox against Fenerbahce. It's justifiable. And it's justifiable at Parkhead. Maybe doing it against Dundee, still the 3 centre-halves, and just have the 2 wing-backs are never really winging back. They're going forward all the time. I'm really interested to see what Barry's tactics, what his formation is going to be. We know it's going to be fluid anyway. He'll change it if it needs changing, but it's interesting to see. I think my main advice would be kill Simon Murray. Just kill Simon Murray. He's an absolute animal. Ferocious Simon. He's fantastic for Dundee. Always gives us a hard time, even for other clubs, for Ross County as well. But we still don't know what his tactics are. But let's be honest, we're also looking to win our 4th straight away game in the league. Our 5th in all competitions. All of the previous wins being 4 previous wins being by 2 clear goals. Even in Istanbul, we won 3-1 in Istanbul, won 4-2 at Rugby Park. But that's a run that began at Tannadice in Dundee, the city of discovery. Not vast as a ship, Discovery is a city discovery. We'll discover how Barry's going to play it on Saturday. That's 1 hour 51 minutes, folks. I'm sorry this has dragged a bit. It's just, I'm actually scared of a lot of the stuff I want to say about the banner. It really has mucked things up, and I was going to talk a bit more about Scotland and the Nations League, but most of you probably aren't interested in that. Let's just say I was proud, and I think Steve Clarke's doing a decent job there. Scotland didn't qualify for anything for ages, and he's going to big plateaus, really horrible plateaus under Steve Clarke, but we do then move up. This is the first time there's been any kind of relegation. We're in the top league, as I say. Expect to get hammered every game, but we lost 3 games, won 2 of them, drew 1. Drop me Ronaldo's Portugal at Hampden, and we won the first leg even of the playoff. That was a fairly understandable result, getting beat 3-0 at home by Greece, who did win the Euros in 2004. A very good team, and I've never seen. There's only 6 UEFA nations I've got left to see in the flesh, and 2 of them are Switzerland. I know, really, I've got a whole story about Switzerland, why I've never seen Switzerland. Quite amazing. Switzerland and Kosovo, and they're in League B. So if we get 2 of them in our wee group, I'd be in absolute heaven, because the Nations League is just glorified friendlies. But I've really enjoyed it. the first time Scotland have ever been relegated, and it's the fourth edition of the Nations League. Yeah, I just leave it there, folks. The thing to do is to remember the ban. Remember the replies that I've seen mostly to the actual idea that we all hate the wokes and what have you. We don't. We hate the woke agendas, and we don't even see that as being a real thing. Extreme measures defeat extremists, individual extremists, but they don't defeat extremism. You've got to hold a hand out to, this is the kind of Islamic side of things. We characterise anything Muslim as being jihadist. They want to impose Sharia law. Not if you're a critic of that kind of stuff, if you hate the woke stuff, that's just not the situation at all. You've got to be able to get on with all communities, and you can solve the problems in those communities by engaging with them, not by being so. I feel as if it is a class thing almost. There's a real problem in the world today with so many people, especially in the Western world. So many folk have had a university or a college education, and there's so many people who it's basically half and half now. And the ones who haven't feel they're being condescended by people who don't have the same street smarts as they do. And the woke agenda, condescending to people because they're being accidentally racist or accidentally sexist or whatever. We have got to take care to make sure we're no. I mean, as I always, when I think of some of the things that some of my relatives have said, just through sheer innocence, genuine ignorance, and if anybody turned around and tried to educate them on this, I would be fucking raging as well, because these are people who I wouldn't be here without. They have raised families and combated actual poverty and all that. The only reason I'm in the world. So we've got to be careful how we do this, try to make sure everybody can be nice to everybody, while also, being aware that there's some people out there who just never will be nice. But I think everybody's quite happy to, but there's the anti-woke stuff, the pro-Farage, the pro Musk and Trump stuff really relies on, it's powered by so many kind of utterly ridiculous conspiracy theories. There's Democratic, Congress people are eating babies underneath pizza parlours, a certain chain of pizza parlours and stuff like that. It's absolutely unbelievable, yet people can't see. They can think up all this stuff with the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, all this kind of complete nonsense. But they can't see that what Trump and Musk are doing is just making more money for themselves. These people have no class. They are not a draft dodger, somebody who's ashamed of their own trans child. And somehow they can't seem to see past that kind of stuff. It's got really bad, this divide that's been imposed upon us. So I don't know. We got to be really careful and give I don't think the divide, it's not a case of the Rangers support all think one way, we all hate the wokes and what have you. And neither is the Rangers support all entirely. We're full on campaigning political correctness. We'll go about hunting down anybody who says something homophobic or racist or transphobic or whatever. Most of us are just kind of in the middle, just trying to get on with our life, and just understanding basic decent humanity. But I feel as if the divide is across society, and Rangers are kind of mirroring that. And there's so many people who hate Rangers that they're trying to, they're trying to make it a lot worse than it actually is. But there's a real danger if we don't deal with this properly. There's going to be a faction within the support that just thinks, and there's actual activists out there. There's people totally venal, totally at it, properly evil bastards, who want us to become anti-woke and racist and homophobic and actively, Islamophobic, etc. So we need to combat that and make sure that they don't power an actual major fuck-up that ends up seeing us banned from Europe. What are Rangers? This is the thing that always leads to that question. What are Rangers, essentially? This is a really pathetic attempt, a confused attempt from just young guys who've got, life's confusing. They don't know what they do. They think they're declaring what Rangers are. Well, what are Rangers? And it's a question I've been asking myself a lot this season, because so much of the hatred being thrown at our own players, our own management, etc. Has made you quite. Is it just about winning trophies as a major part of Rangers performing optimally is winning trophies? But this idea that that's all we are, as a trophy-winning organisation, that's garbage. There's got to be something that's there that you support always. I felt as if I knew what that was, but it's certainly not running about spouting these kind of bumper stickers for racists. It's not that kind of stuff. That's not what we're about either. I've got a really interesting, really super interesting to me theory about Rangers and Celtic both being reactionary clubs, born of reaction, both born of Celtic not wanting their fans to go to the Church of Scotland. So we need to get, they've got Church of Scotland soup kitchens, all that kind of stuff. And Rangers, 1872 just being the same as just a Scottish club, and then suddenly there's the Irish arrive, and there's this desire to, in the 1920s or whatever it was, whenever the folk come over from the shipyards, the workers come over from Northern Ireland, it got a bit more radical, and there was an actual question was asked, who's going to rise up and stop the Irish when Hibs and Celtic were winning so much. Some newspaper of the day or some Scottish football magazine of the day asked that question. It's like, we answered the call. And it's like we've been reacting to everything ever since, despite being accused of being the kind of the lazy, institutionalised establishment club, which I think HMRC blew that out of the water in 2012. Blew that notion out of the water. But it really it's quite interesting to think what we're going to be. But the one thing I know we aren't is this, painfully anti-woke, kind of lazy, half-arsed right-wing pish. That's no Rangers at all. And I'm just been really glad to see the reaction online. The vast majority of our fans don't think that at all. So let's just go up to Dens Park, or in my case, get sat on the sofa at 5:30 on Saturday night and enjoy watching Rangers play football.